Hello everybody, welcome back to a new episode of DevDrawer. In one of the last videos that we did in our Quickie series, we showed you how to install WordPress, install a free template inside of WordPress, and kind of set it up a little bit. So today we're going to be going over how to start creating your own custom theme. So essentially we're going to be doing the very basics of it to get it started, and once we have a foundation for it, we'll continue it in another video in a different series a little down the road to kind of go into how to customize it even further. But by the time you get done with this tutorial, you should have a fully functional WordPress theme that you can either run with and keep going on your own, or you can wait for us to do a new video where we go into some of the more advanced parts of creating a WordPress template. So first we're going to notice that we are currently we have a WP Bootstrap starter theme, which is this one here. What we're going to do is create a new theme, and for this template we're going to call it DevDrawer. So usually whenever you create a WordPress theme, you need to have different files and everything, but the only ones that are really required to see it inside of your administration panel would be the style.css and the index.php. So I'm going to go ahead and create those files. So we got index.php and style.css. Alright, so now we have these two files. So if we go back to our administration panel and we go to themes, we'll see that there is this theme here, but if we activated it right now, it wouldn't really do anything because everything's blank, and you do need more than the index.php and the style.css. So we're going to go ahead and create some more of the files that we're going to be using inside of our configuration. There's other ways that you can create it. You can use theme builders and all this other kind of really cool stuff, but for our purposes we're going to just create it from scratch using the basic files that we need. So let's go ahead and start creating some of those files. So some of the files that are required to have a functional WordPress theme would be a footer.php, a header.php, then we've created the index, we created the style, so a new one would be functions.php, and then we're going to go ahead and create the home.php, which would be the blog home page. And then also we're going to create an archive.php, which would be the blog archive page. And then we're also going to create a new file called single.php, which would be the single blog article. So initially I told you guys in the other tutorial in our quickie for installing WordPress, if you wanted to run just a standalone website using WordPress as the content management system, that's how we currently have it set up. But you can, so you won't necessarily need the home or the archive or the single if you're not going to be displaying a blog at all. But we're going to be setting up this one to display a blog as well as individual pages. Alright, so let me close out of some of these files so that we can kind of get back to where we need to go. So in the style.css, we need to give the template information so that WordPress knows what to call it. We'll also set up an image that can be displayed here. So let's go over to our style.css, and there's a few things that you need in order to have WordPress display the information about it. So first thing would be theme name, and we're going to call this one the DevDrawer. And then theme URI, which is where the where they would find the theme, where they would be downloading it. But if it's not something you're going to be selling, it's just going to be something you're pushing out for a client, then I would just put in whatever their domain is. So we're just going to do the devdrawer.com since that is our domain, and the author, which is self-explanatory, and it is DevDrawer, which is me. And then the author URI would be information where that would be pertaining to you as the developer. Since we are developing the theme for the DevDrawer, me being the dev drawer, we're just going to have it point the author URI back to the devdrawer.com. The devdrawer.com. And then we need to have a description, and this description is going to be a sample theme built using Bootstrap, because we will be integrating Bootstrap into this theme to make it a little bit easier. If you ever watched any of our other videos, you know I'm a huge fan of Bootstrap. For the license, we just put in the defaults that WordPress looks for, because it is a open source license, open source solution. So we just add in the GNU General Public License as well as the license URI. That's not something you necessarily have to include in there, but you can, you should include it. There's another option that you would typically include in here as well, and that would be your text domain. If you wanted to have your theme to be translatable, we're not going to get into that, because that includes a whole new can of worms for you to have to worry about whenever you're developing a theme. But if you want to sell your theme on Envato or anything like that, that is something you should definitely consider. So for right now, this is all we need to do inside of our style.css, and we're going to go over here and refresh it. And now you can see it says the dev drawer, and you can see the information that we put in here regarding it. I just noticed that we did not put in a version number, so let me go ahead and add that version number as well. So let's see, underneath the description we're going to do version, and we're just going to do 1.0.0. So now if I refresh the page again, theme details 1.0.0. Okay. So now we have this theme, and I've already created an image to go in here, so I'm going to simply copy that image, and it has to be named screenshot.png in order for it to be displayed inside of your WordPress installation. So screenshot.png. Now if we do a refresh here, you'll see our common background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and activate this theme, and it's not going to really do anything because it's basically nothing there. We have nothing inside of our index, so it's just displaying a blank page, which is what we want it to do right now. So we want to go to our index.php, and we want to start coding the header, the footer, and how it's supposed to get the content. So first thing you need to do is use a WordPress function called getHeader, and this will gather all of the information that's that you put in your header.php, and then inside of your header.php you'll call another function called wp_head that will pull any scripts or styles or anything like that that you add to your functions.php. And then because we're using Bootstrap, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this into a div class container fluid, and this isn't something you necessarily have to do, but I'm just doing it to show that, you know, the padding on each side of it when we actually go to push it out and integrate Bootstrap into it. So we're going to do if have posts, which is a function that WordPress uses to check to see if the content is for this page is available. And then we're going to do a while loop inside of it. So while it has post, and then we're going to gather the array from a function called thePost, which is going to get us all of the content of this page. And this index.php is just going to be like a default page for us. We're actually going to create in the page.php, which I did not add on here, but in the page.php we're actually going to use that to display our pages, and then the single would display the blog article singles. So I'll add that page in just a second, but let's go ahead and just pass on a header tag that displays the title of the page, which would be PHP the title, which echoes out the title. And we're also going to do use the WordPress function again for the content, and that's just going to echo out the content of the page. We're going to close out our while loop, and then we're also going to close out our if loop. Alright, and then after we get this, we're going to do PHP get footer. So these are going to use the standard header and footer PHPs that we created, so header.php, footer.php, but we can also create specific header and footer for specific pages. So let's say if we had a contact page but we wanted to display a contact only header, we would create something called header-contact.php, and then in here we would say contact, which was just the name of the file that's after the dash, header dash. But for right now, we're just going to use the defaults. And if we refresh our page now, we'll see that it's displaying the content from this page that we have assigned as the home page, which is just simple content. Okay, so now I want to, okay, this is all I need for the index.php. So we need to create the functions that pull the Bootstrap. So in one of my previous videos, whenever I was creating a CRUD system, I actually went over what I do for minimizing the external calls. And again, I don't recommend pulling from the web every time, because it's a resource that your website has to go grab, and if there's ever any kind of connectivity issues or anything like that, especially if you're developing locally, you won't be able to pull your styles or your fonts or anything like that. So I'm just going to copy over the minified files that I previously created into a folder for JavaScript and CSS, just to have it in here, and then I'll show you how to reference it in the functions.php. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder called CSS and a new folder called JS. And then inside of these folders, I'm going to just pull over the CSS and the JS that I've previously created. So let me grab this, and I'm going to paste it there. So I got my mini.min, which is essentially pulling over the newest version of Bootstrap, as well as this one's pulling over Popper, as well as Bootstrap JavaScript. So inside of our functions.php, we're going to enqueue those styles and scripts. So here, let's go ahead and create function dev drawer. You can name this whatever you want to name it, and then enqueue. And this is just so I know that it's my theme that's enqueuing these scripts. So inside of this function, we're going to use the function wp-enqueue. I think I spelled that right. Enqueue, and then style. And then I'm also going to I'm enqueue two styles, one being the Bootstrap and then one being the style.css that we created. And then the next one is going to be, instead of enqueue style, it's going to be enqueue script. So we need to name the styles and the scripts whenever they're being pulled. So I'm going to call this one mini CSS. And then we're going to use another function called get template directory. And we're going to be in this one for a little while, so I'm going to go ahead and close that down so you can see the whole screen. Get template directory underscore URI. So that's just going to get us the reference to the URL for this style sheet. And then we're going to pass css/mini.min.css, which is the files that we created here. So /css/mini.min.css. And then I'm just going to copy over this and this, but I'm going to name this one style. And then we're just going to copy over that, and we're going to change this because it's not pointing there. We're just going to do style.style.css. And again, we're enqueuing our style after the minification is done. That way that anything we put inside of our style sheet will overwrite what we want it to inside of the Bootstrap style sheet. Alright, so one more thing we're going to do over here. I'm just going to copy this whole thing again. And this one is going to be mini.js. We're going to do the template directory /js /mini.min.js. Now here we're not including inside of our minification script, we're not including jQuery like we've previously done, because WordPress has its own version of jQuery that's installed with the content management system itself. So we're just going to force it to use jQuery. So we're going to add an array, and inside of this array we're going to say jQuery. That way we're telling it to force jQuery to be used. And then we're going to set the final variable to true, and at the end of this we're going to add action, and this should be an underscore. We're going to add action, and it's going to hook into the WP in Q scripts function, and then we're just going to pass what we called this function, dev drawer in QUEUE. Okay, so now if we go back to our page and refresh, let me see what it's doing here. So view page source. Oh, that's because I don't actually have a header inside of the I don't have anything inside of my header, so it's not pulling anything yet. So we have our scripts and everything added, so let's go ahead and open up our I want to open up the header file next. Let me just check my notes. Okay. Header.php. Inside of our header.php file, we're going to I'm going to copy over some defaults that WordPress uses, just so you can kind of see what the default head will look like. So this, and then we're going to have a opening body tag with PHP body class. This is going to pass variables like page, post template, stuff like this, so that you can use them as CSS if you want to. And then I'm going to just leave it at this. So now we should be able to refresh the page and see that now it's pulling our Bootstrap. And if we go to inspect this element, you'll see inside of the head it's pulling the minification scripts as well as the styles and the mini CSS. So this is pulling everything that we've just added to our functions.php. So now that we have our header working, I'm going to head back to the functions.php, and there's some things that we can add here. Close this again. There's some things that we can add here that will add some support that WordPress expects, like a title tag and post thumbnails. So right now, before I add this, if you look here, it says WordPress.local because there's nothing here to tell it to use the title tag whenever it's displaying the metadata. So we're going to do add theme support, and then we're going to pass title tag. And then there's another one we want to add, which is going to be add theme support, and this is going to be post dash thumbnails, and that'll give us the ability to create images inside of our post. So now I'm going to go back to the site and refresh, and you'll see now it's displaying the title like it should. So now we've added some elements into our theme support. There's actually a lot of other elements that we could add, but I'm not going to go into it into this tutorial because it's there's a lot of different things that you can add to it, and this thing would be 5 hours long if I did that. So right now there's another thing that I want to do. Since I'm using Bootstrap, there's this includable class that you can use that's on GitHub. It's called class-wp-bootstrap-navwalker, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and add another function that is going to pull that. Now I just copied and pasted that because that's a lot to take in, but essentially it's registering a nav walker, which is going to help us set up the mobile navigation that Bootstrap comes pre-built with. It utilizes it, and it actually breaks down the PHP that's being used, and it creates the same nav structure rather than relying on you to code it yourself. So we're just going to create a folder that's called include, and we're going to copy and paste this this PHP file. So let me get rid of this to make sure that I'm going in the right place. And I'm just going to create a file called include. And then there's on GitHub, if you do a search for WP Bootstrap Nav Walker, I'll go over here and paste this in. It gives you the file that you can just copy and paste here. So I already have the file, so I'm just going to go ahead and move it over to my installation. But you could copy it from there, and then you just paste it and make sure it's named correctly, like it is here. Whenever you go to call it here, just make sure that this name lines up with this name. And that's going to give us Bootstrap Nav Walker capabilities. So what I want to do also inside of this, now that we have this, and I know I'm not showing you what this looks like yet because we don't technically have a navigation menu, which is another thing that we need to add to our functions.php. So here we're going to use a function called register nav menus, and then we're going to pass an array to it, and that array is going to contain a footer and a header menu for us. So we're going to call one of them header, and that's going to be passing the name header, and then we're going to call the other one footer, which is again going to be passing the name footer. You can name these whatever you want to name them, but I name them that way because inside of our administration, if we go to appearance, right now I need to refresh the page since we just added that functionality, we can go to menus now and see that we have a header and a footer. So if I use the header navigation that we had already created with a prior Bootstrap theme, and I'm going to set it to the newly created nav menu header, and then I'm going to save it. So now if we refresh this, still not there because I'm not displaying it yet. So I'll get to that part in just a second. But we registered them, and we can save it here, and then I can also create a footer menu and then do the same thing with that one. But I'm going to leave that blank for right now. There's a few other things that I want to add to the functions.php while we're inside of it. So we're going to create another function that's called dev drawer widgets initialization, so init, and then we're going to pass a function called register sidebar. And this register sidebar is it's going to be expecting an array, so we're going to pass an array. This sidebar, what it does is that we can create different widgets inside of WordPress that we can call from the side. We can call them in the footer. Like right now, if there's no widgets menu icon here, but whenever we save this, it'll actually register the ability for us to create these widgets. So let's finish registering one of them, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So let's do name, and then we're just going to name this, let's do sidebar. And then we're going to give it an ID, and we're going to do sidebar. Sounds good. And then we're going to set a class or something to happen before the widget is displayed. Sorry, I'm just structuring my content so it's easier for me to read later. And then in this, we're going to pass a div. So we want it to be wrapped inside of a div. And then we're going to pass the ID using object-oriented programming. And then we're also going to pass a class that's going to be named widget, as well as the ID that gets passed. So we're going to do widget, and let's go ahead and do the div ID. We're going to pass %$1$s. And we're going to do the same thing here. So widget, but we're going to do %$2$s. And that's just going to pass the class and the ID to this variable for us. Alright, so let me decrease this so you can see it a little bit better. And then we're going to do the after widget, and we're going to pass the closing div for it. Alright, so then now we need to do before title, so we're going to wrap our titles in an h4 tag. You can wrap it in whatever you want to. I'm just going to use an h4 tag. So we're just going to do h4, and we don't need the autocomplete right now. And then we're going to do another one that's after title, and we're going to pass the same thing with the closing h4. And that's how you create a widget. So now if we go back into our WordPress backend and refresh widget, oh, we registered it, but we didn't actually call it. So let's go down here and do add action, add underscore action, and then widgets, initialize, and inside of this we're going to just call the function that we just created, dev drawer widgets initialize. Alright, and close that off. Now we should be able to refresh it and see that we have widgets available, and we have a sidebar that's available, and it's stocked with the default options that come with a blog sidebar for WordPress. So we're going to register a few more sidebars because eventually I want to make it where our footer is widgetized as well. So we're going to add 3 more. So we got sidebar, and then we're going to call this one footer left, and we're just going to change the name to footer left. And actually I'm going to delete these and copy it 2 more times just so I ain't gotta retype footer again and again. So this one's going to be footer center, and then this one is going to be right and right. Okay, so now we refresh this again. Now we have footer left, center, right, and a sidebar. For now, I think that is all that we need to add inside of our functions.php. So let's see. We've coded the index.php. I need to create the page.php as well. So I'm going to take what's in here, and I'm going to copy. Okay. So I'm going to new file, and we're going to say page.php, and this is going to display the generic page information, which we want to have the same as our index.php. You can change this up. You can create different page templates too. You can do like page-home, which you can customize completely and have a completely different home page than you do your content pages, which is very common in WordPress development. You have a very fancy looking home page that displays everything, but your internal pages just display the content. Okay, so we got that how we want it, and we can kind of see that over here. So let's see what other pages that we have created. So I don't want to go to the blog part yet, so let's go to the privacy policy page, and this is using this template now. So if we come in here and we delete the h1 and then refresh, the h1 will be gone. And the home page is now also using this page.php. Like I said, you can create a page-home and then come in here and set this you can come in here and set this to display a different page attribute. I don't think we have it enabled, which I'm not going to worry about that right now. Whenever we do go in here to create a page-home, I'll show you how to do it, but right now we don't have any additional templates, so it's not pulling anything. Okay, so we have our page and our home, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, and I'm going to open up the header now to start coding this menu so that we can see it. So whenever we're creating a menu, you might notice that I didn't close out the body tag yet. I'm actually going to do that in the footer, but for right now I'm just going to just code it as if I'm using a complete page. So we have our header, and then I'm going to use the Bootstrap nav class, and it's kind of in depth, but what I want to show you is the end result of it. It's pretty big, but this is something you can grab straight from Bootstrap. And if you remember, we grabbed that Bootstrap nav walker from GitHub. If you go down a little bit further, they actually show you how you can initialize that the WP nav menu. So this is how you initialize the WP nav menu using the Bootstrap nav walker. So what I did was I just copied it and pasted it. The only thing I changed is here they have the container ID is an example nav bar. I just changed it to header nav, and then I had that reflected inside of the area controls and the data target for the Bootstrap navigation. So this is something that you're able to pull from Bootstrap's navigation. I set it to BG dark so that I can kind of show you what it will look like with the, so you can differentiate the content from the header and the footer. So now if we save this and refresh, you see that now we have a header navigation that should be mobile responsive. So let's see if we can inspect, click on this, and now you see that there is a Bootstrap navigation using mobile responsive. I also included the word menu here so that whenever you, as you notice here, it says menu, you can actually use Font Awesome and use an icon there, or you can use an animated SVG or something like that. So whenever you click on it, it changes into an X or whatever it is. But for this tutorial, I just used the word menu. So that kind of explains all of this. The only thing that you really need to take in consideration is the theme location is header, and that's based off of the header that we created here, because this is where we want that menu to display. And then we will do the same thing with the footer in just a few minutes, where it's not going to use the nav walker because we're not going to have to use Bootstrap with it. But so we have our header, and then we're using the fallback for using the nav walker, and that just essentially again initializes the Bootstrap inside of WordPress, the Bootstrap navigation inside of WordPress. Let's see. So we have our header. Let's go ahead and open up our footer, and inside of our footer we're going to, I'm just going to create a class called footer, and then after that I'm going to do PHP WP footer, just like we did the header in the header.php. Then I'm going to close out my body tag and then close out the HTML tag, because all the other content is going to be produced inside of the pages, and they don't have a header or a footer on them except for where they're being called at. So now if we refresh this, we can see that now it has all of the functionality that we want, because I'm actually closing out the body tag and the HTML tag and including the scripts that come with it. So if we go to inspect our elements now, you can see that we have our our footer scripts are down here, and then our head scripts are up here, or styles are up here. So everything's in place where it needs to be. Alright, so for the footer, I think I want to also show you how to use the sidebars. So let's come over here, and I'm going to set this class to BG dark as well, so it'll separate itself as well. So let's do div class. I'm going to put it in a container dash fluid, and I'm putting this inside of the footer because I want the BG dark to expand all the way across the page, but I want our content to be contained inside of this fluid container. So what we need to do is first we need to check to see if there is a sidebar active, and if it is, we display it. If not, then we don't display anything. So let's do PHP end if. Go ahead and close that out. Now we come back over here, and we're going to use the function called is active sidebar, and then we're going to pass the footer underscore left, which is what we called it whenever we created it, footer left, and then we're going to div class equals column, and that also means that I need to do div class equals row. Again, Bootstrap column and row functionality here. Alright, so I'm going to display it inside of a column. And I'm not putting any classes around the column right now, so it's just going to expand all the way across. But you'll see why in a second. So PHP, and you could do a function called get_sidebar, but I found that the dynamic underscore sidebar functionality works a lot better. It's a lot easier to manage. You don't have to create your own sidebar.php unless you absolutely want to. So now, if we refresh our page, nothing's happening because we don't have a widget set up. So let's say if we wanted to do on our footer left, we want to have an image. So we're going to drop an image in here. We're going to select an image that I've previously uploaded. It's a huge image, wouldn't normally put it there. But I'm just going to put it there for now. So we're going to add to widget and save. And now if we go back to here and refresh, you'll see that now the footer is present and that image that we put in there is also present. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste this 3 times and then change these. So this one's going to say right, center, and center. So right now nothing's being displayed, and I'm going to show you why I decided to leave it as column instead of doing column MD or whatever it is. So let's just say if I wanted to have a footer on the left and a footer on the right. So let's just say I want to add in the pages here, and I'm going to title it pages, and I'm going to save this. If we refresh, we have 2 columns. Now we still have the ability to add in another one. So let's say we want to do just a general text widget here. So no title, let's just say this is the center column. And we're going to save that and refresh, and now we have, you can't see it because of the text, but this is a center column, our pages, and our image. So let's try to make it look a little prettier now. So I'm going to go into our style.css, and I'm going to take the header and the footer, and I'm going to make the default color of the text be white, and then I'm going to do header link, footer link, and I'm also going to make that white as well. So if we refresh this page, our text and our links look much better than they did. So I'm also going to add in a hover for the header and the footer. If you know anything about CSS, you'll know what this is. But I'm doing for hover active focus for the footer and the header. Then I'm just changing the color and removing the underline, because if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I do not like those at all. So I'm also going to add a margin on the bottom of the header to be 1 rem, and I'm going to make that menu, which is in a class called navbar toggler, and I'm going to make it white as well. Last thing, let's say I want to add some padding to the footer. So we're going to do padding 1 rem on the top and the bottom, but nothing on the left and the right. And then we're going to add a margin dash top of 2 rem so that it's not butting up right up against the content like it currently is. So now let's do a refresh, and we have our padding. It looks much nicer than it did. We have a nice little gray hover link for this. And if we switch this back to a mobile responsive, you'll see that our menu is now white. So it's a little bit easier to read. Okay, so now let's switch back to the footer.php. And inside this footer, I'm going to add a copyright notice that you may see in a lot of the other websites that you've ever been to. So let's do div class equals row, and we're going to do div class equals column. And inside of this, we're just going to write out copyright, and then we're going to use the PHP echo date, and we're just going to grab the year, and then we're going to close that off, add the copy sign, and let's do ahref. We want the copyright to link back to the main site, so we're going to do ahref. We're going to use a PHP function for WordPress called escape URL, and then we're going to pass the home URL, and we're just going to make it use the absolute home URL. Close those off, close out our PHP, and then we're going to pass another variable that is, I need to close this, and then we're going to pass another variable that's blog info, and then we're just going to pass the name of the site so that it's automatically managed by WordPress. And the way you do that is blog info, and then we're just going to pass name. Alright, so now if we refresh, we should say a copyright notice at the bottom. But that's not exactly where I want it to be at. I want it to be outside of the footer. Yeah, let's make it outside of the footer. Alright, there we go. That looks much cleaner. Actually, you know what? Let's just leave it inside the footer because I'm going to add some navigation there as well. So I'm going to add a little break tag here to get it way it's not butting right up against it. Actually, better yet, because if those columns are not active, it's not going to display what I want it to. So I'm going to add a break tag into each one of these columns. That way that they will dictate the height that's above them, because if these weren't there, we'd have an additional space above it. So if they're there, then it displays the break tag underneath them. If they're not, then it doesn't display that at all, and copyright's just centered in between it. Now you see here DevDrawer testing suite. That's because we put in the blog info name, which is going to now link us back to the home page that we're currently on. Okay, so I added a column here because I want to set it up so that now we can set up a footer menu. So I'm going to do div class equals column dash md dash 6 text right. And then inside of this, we're going to use the same functionality that we used here. We're going to use it here, but we're not going to be utilizing the Bootstrap nav walker. So get rid of this since that's not being used there. We're going to change this to footer. And then here we're going to set this to 1 because we only want this one to be 1 level deep. On this one, it's set to 2 because it can be multiple levels deep. And then we're just going to set the div here. We want it to be inside of a div, and we want that div to be text right. And we don't need a container ID because we're not passing anything to it, nor do we need a menu class. We're just going to use LI tags, or list item tags. Alright, so now if we go back and refresh the page, we'll see that it's using the default links because we don't actually have a menu that's created in the back for the footer. But before we go do anything else, I want to style it a little bit. So let's do footer UL. I'm just going to remove the margin, and I'm going to remove the padding, and then we're going to do footer UL LI, and I'm going to display these inline block, and then we're going to do list style type none, and I also want to separate them, so footer UL LI, and I want to add a pipe character after them. So we're going to do the after pseudocode, and we're going to do content, and we're just going to pass a pipe to it. But I don't want it to display on the last one, so we're going to do footer UL LI last child after, and then we're just going to do content equals nothing. Alright, so now if we refresh this again, now it has the pipe characters. They're all in line with each other, and then the privacy policy doesn't have the pipe character. So I'm going to come over here to our menus, and I'm going to create a new menu here, and I'm going to call it footer. And I'm going to create it, and I'm going to assign it to the display location of footer, and then I'm going to set the privacy policy to be the only thing in it. So now if we refresh, we just have the privacy policy. Anytime we add more links to that, it will actually grow a little bit. Alright, so I think for now that's all we need to do in the style sheet, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. So we created these. Let me go ahead and close out of the header and the footer as well. I think I'm done with the functions.php. So we created these home.php, which is going to be the blog home, and then this archive.php and this single.php. So we need to code those in order to display an archive as well as display blog articles and an individual article. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to copy over my index.php into my home, just because it uses a lot of the same code, just it has a few differences. So we're going to do PHP, and let me close this out so you can see it because it's a long one. The archive title. So actually, you know what? Let's just on the home. Let's just we can either echo out blog, or we can have it do the title like we did with the internal content, and it'll display the title of the blog. So if we change that to something else inside of the pages over, so right now it'll just display pages. It'll display blog. So we can change this to whatever we want to, but for right now I'm just going to do the title and see how that looks. But I do want to wrap it in an h1 tag, so we're going to do h1, and let's do class of archive-title, and then let's take that and push that over. Okay, so we're still going to use the if have post, but on this one, instead of just displaying the content, we're going to do div class row, and we're going to display each one of these in a column. Let's close out the div, and inside of this, so this will stay the same, but what we want to do is, instead of getting the content, because you don't want to have on your blog page the entire content that you're looking for, we're going to grab the function, the excerpt, which will take the first few characters of the page unless you've defined an excerpt, and then it'll take that excerpt. And then we also want to pass a permalink to it. So a permalink is WordPress's URL structure. So we're going to do p class, let's just leave this blank for now, and then we're going to do ahref equals php the permalink, and then we're going to do read more, close out our a tag. I also want to add this to a class for Bootstrap's button, so btn primary, and then the read more. So we got our end while, and then we have our end if. So let's see how that looks for now. So if we go back to our blog page, you'll now see that, okay, this isn't going to be the way to do because it's getting the first title that's coming across it. So what I'm actually going to do here is what I was going to do in the first place, and we're going to do a PHP, and then we're going to use the function the archive title, and then we're going to pass h1 class archive, so essentially what we just called it, archive title, and then we're going to close it out here. So we're going to pass the information that we want to present to it, and then have it displayed in the h1 tag. So now if we refresh the page, there we go, archives. We can also come in here and say, instead of doing the archive title, we could set it up so that it is blogs or news articles or whatever else that we want to call it. Okay, so we have our div class row. I need to add this to a column so that it's not looking all weird like it is. Div class column, and I'm just going to make it extend all the way across the screen for now. Okay, save that. There we go. Now it's actually formatted the way it should be. So if we had another article, it would appear below it, or actually this one would make it where it appears next to it, and then next to it, and then next to it, and then next to it, because I don't have anything set. So let's go ahead and say we want to just do MD6 so it can display 2 on each row, and then it'll loop down to the next row. But also let's make it prettier. So let's do div class equals card, because you know I love those Bootstrap cards. And then div class card body, and let me take this and get it out of there and paste it here. Okay, so let's say we're going to do card body. I want to center this, and it doesn't need to be an H1, it needs to be an H2. I want to center this, so class equals text dash center, and then also now we can add that text dash center here. And we got our read more button. Title, let's if there is an image with it, we want to make it where the image is linkable. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to copy this, paste it up here, but instead of doing a read more button or even having a class on it, we are going to pass the post thumbnail. So PHP the post thumbnail, and close out the PHP. Inside of the post thumbnail, we want to pass on the medium size image, because if this is going to be MD6, it's going to be not as large as full screen. So we're just going to pass in the medium size image that will allow us to not take up so much processing power whenever you're loading it. But we also want to pass a class. So we're going to do class, and then our class is going to be equal to image-fluid, and then image-thumbnail, so it has a border around it. And then we also want to pass the title, and we're going to make that title be equal to get the title. So you might notice that the title and get the title is different, because they're similar, but they provide two different functions. One function being that it displays it within the text, the other one being that it's essentially echoed out wherever it's at. So the title is echoed out wherever it's at, and get the title is basically getting it through PHP. So we're going to pass get the title here. Alright, so now let's save this and refresh. There we go. Looks much cleaner, but we don't have an image for our blog. So I'm going to come over here to featured image, and I'm going to select this image because it's the only one that we have in there. And we're going to update, and now if we refresh, we'll see that there's an image that's being passed, but it is very small. So why is it very small? Image fluid, image thumbnail, card body, card, column MD6, and then the medium size image. It shouldn't be that small. It's definitely not pulling the image that I want it to. So that's the one that it should be pulling. So let me see what happens if I type in large here, see how that reacts. Okay. I guess maybe the smaller image, based on our settings for the media here, medium size 300 by 300. So what we could do is just increase this to whatever size that our typical blog article width would be, and then we could just use it that way. But right now it's just one image, not a lot of load resources happening, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. But that's how you can go in there in the future and do it. I'm also going to add some padding or break tags underneath it. You can do that with the class, but I'm just going to simply add the break tags underneath it. Okay, so now we have our loops going through, but I don't want it to just I don't want it to just display the blog articles. I also want it to display the pagination that comes at the end. So if they need to navigate through the post, they can do a previous and a next. So they click on it, it goes to the past, however many that we told it to use. So the way that you do that is, let's open up our PHP, and then we're going to use a function called the post pagination, and then we're going to pass an array to it, which is going to have array to it, and we're going to have our prev text is going to be equal to previous, or you can use a font awesome icon, whatever you want to do here. It takes HTML. I'm just going to pass text to it, and then next text is going to be next. So we don't have enough articles to actually be able to see how this works, but once we got to, I think we have it in our settings here, settings reading, we have 10 posts. So we had 11 posts, it would go to the next page and display the last article, or the oldest article would be on the next page and the previous page. Okay, so you won't actually see a difference here because there's not enough pages to go through. Alright, so inside of this has post, I want to right below where it's grabbing the title, I want to do div class equals row, and then div class equals column, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to bump these over, and I'm going to add one of our sidebars to it. So we got our column there, so I'm going to do div class equals column dash md dash 4, and if you remember in our footer.php we used this dynamic sidebar function. Well, we're going to do the same thing here. So let's close that, and we're going to do here, instead of doing footer, we're going to do sidebar. So if we go back over here, refresh our page, now we have our sidebar. It's split 4 and 8, and then these are going to be 6 and 6, and then it's going to go down to the next row 6 and 6. So right now we don't have anything inside of our widget for the sidebar. It's using the defaults. So let's go over here and delete all of the ones that are there so that I can show you how it changes. Now let's go ahead and leave this one where it's at, get rid of the meta, and let's add the search back to it. Alright, so now if we refresh, we have our archives, we have our categories, and the search. So there's a way that you can do the search. You can actually customize the way it looks by creating a search.php and then adding whatever HTML you want to in there, and then it will be displayed here. But I'm not going to go that far on this tutorial because I'm pretty sure I'm already pushing an hour. So luckily we're almost done. Okay, so we've created the home. The archive is going to pretty much look exactly like the home because it's going to be it's an archive page. So right now if we click on March 2020, nothing displays because this archive.php is blank. So what we want to do is just copy that over, and it has the same look as our blog page, just now this archive title at the top reflects what you're seeing. So the same thing with the categories. Now we have this single.php, which we haven't done anything with. So we're going to take this single.php and I'm going to take what I did in the home and I'm going to copy it over, but we can't use the home for it. So I'm going to get rid of some of the stuff that we don't need inside of it. Like for example, we don't need any of this, and we don't need actually, let me go ahead and take this, paste that down, close it out. Then we're going to do div class column just to make it stretch all the way across the screen, and that should be good there. We need to keep our row and our column. We can get rid of this because we're going to pass the actual title of the article. So we got our container, row, column, the other column, and then we're closing those out. Alright, so now we can get rid of this div because it no longer exists. And we're going to use the same functionality that we did here to grab the post thumbnail. Instead of wrapping it inside of an A tag, I'm going to just copy over what is here, and we're going to pass in the full, which will be full size image, or you can pass in the large because I think ours is 1,000 pixels width, so it'll stretch all the way across the screen to where it needs to. We can keep the image fluid. Over here now we can come back. Where's it at? Come back over here and grab the title the same way we did in the archive. Paste that here, but I'm going to pass a variable to it. So it's going to do h1 class, kind of the same way we did with the archive title in the other one. And then it's going to wrap it in an h1 tag. Or you could just wrap your own h1 tag around it if you wanted to. So it's either way you can do it. And then we're going to add a break tag, and then we're going to now echo out the content, which we removed off of the other one. And we're also going to do PHP comments underscore template. WordPress's template system is horrendous, which you'll see here. It's terrible. So I would recommend in this section either including your own template where you style it completely, and then you could just reference it, or use Facebook commenting system, which I use on a lot of our news articles and stuff like that, because it's something that it's interactive. It's something gets shared out on Facebook, it automatically updates. So I use that, but it's a preference for you, whatever way you want it to do that. But ours is using Facebook there. But that's how you would display the default WordPress, and then you can just go in there and style it however you want to. But for right now, that's got your comments, you got your sidebar, you got your content with the image on it. Let's see, so I'm going to add a break tag right before the title because I don't like how close the image is to the title. I'm going to add another break tag to it, which again you can control through your classes, but roughly getting it done how it is now. Alright, so now we have our blog page, archive page, single page, home page, individual page. So I think that is done. Let me go into our menus. We already got our footer added. We've created all of our widgets. No, we haven't. Yeah, we have. Okay, so I think that I'm going to go ahead and stop it here because I've been recording for over an hour now. So this is going to be another one of my super long videos. But I think next time I want to work in WordPress, I'm going to create some shortcode functionality that we can include, maybe create a new custom post type. There's a pretty cool way that I do it using TypeRocket. If you're not familiar with TypeRocket, it's a custom meta box generator, which makes it a lot easier than having to try to build it yourself, and it's free. So I'll show you how to integrate that into your theme, and I'll show you how to use it, creating your own custom post types. But for now, I think I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. If you like what you saw so far, definitely look at some of our other videos where we go into how to create a PHP CRUD system. We're looking into doing a object-oriented programming tutorial that I've already almost completed, going into server setup. So if you like this video, like and subscribe, comment, let me know what you think. But I think for now that's going to do it, so I will see you later.